His left hand was still cramped, but he was unknotting it slowly. I hate cramp, he thought. It is a treachery of one's own body. It is humiliating before others to have a diarrhea from ptomaine poisoning, or to vomit from it. But a cramp, he thought of it as a calambre, humiliates oneself especially when one is alone. If the boy were here, he could rub it for me and loosen it down from the forearm, he thought. But it will loosen up. Then, with his right hand, he felt the difference in the pull of the line, before he saw the slant change in the water. Then, as he leaned against the line and slapped his left hand hard and fast against his thigh, he saw the line slanting slowly upwards. "He's coming up," he said. "Come on, hand, please, come on." The line rose slowly and steadily, and then the surface of the ocean bulged ahead of the boat, and the fish came out. He came out unendingly, and water poured from his sides. He was bright in the sun, and his head and back were dark purple, and in the sun the stripes on his sides showed wide and light lavender. His sword was as long as a baseball bat, and tapered like a rapier, and he rose his full length from the water, and then re-entered it, smoothly, like a diver, and the old man saw the great scythe blade of his tail go under, and the line commenced to race out. "He is 2 feet longer than the skiff," the old man said. The line was going out fast, but steadily, and the fish was not panicked. The old man was trying with both hands to keep the line just inside of breaking strength. He knew that if he could not slow the fish with a steady pressure, then the fish would take out all the line and break it. He is a great fish, and I must convince him, he thought. I must never let him learn his strength, nor what he could do if he made his run. If I were him, I would put everything in now and go until something broke. But, thank God, they are not as intelligent as we who kill them, although they are more noble and more able. The old man had seen many great fish. He had seen many that weighed more than 1,000 pounds, and he had caught 2 of that size in his life, but never alone. Now, alone, out of sight of land, he was fast to the biggest fish that he had ever seen, and bigger than he had ever heard of, and his left hand was still as tight as the gripped claws of an eagle. It will uncramp, though, he thought. Surely it will uncramp to help my right hand. There are 3 things that are brothers, the fish and my 2 hands. It must uncramp. It is unworthy of it to be cramped. The fish had slowed again, and he was going at his usual pace. I wonder why he jumped, the old man thought. He jumped almost as though to show me how big he was. I know now, anyway, he thought. I wish I could show him what sort of man I am. But then he would see the cramped hand. Let him think I am more man than I am, and I will be so. I wish I was the fish, he thought, with everything he has against only my will and my intelligence. He settled comfortably against the wood and took his suffering as it came, and the fish swam steadily, and the boat moved slowly through the dark water. There was a small sea rising with the wind coming up from the east, and at noon the old man's left hand was uncramped. "Bad news for you, fish," he said, and shifted the line over the sacks that covered his shoulders. He was comfortable but suffering, although he did not admit the suffering at all. "I'm not religious," he said, "but I will say 10 Our Fathers and 10 Hail Marys that I should catch this fish, and I promise to make a pilgrimage to the Virgin de Cobre if I catch him. That is a promise." He commenced to say his prayers mechanically. Sometimes he would be so tired that he could not remember the prayer, and then he would say them fast, so that they would come automatically. Hail Marys are easier to say than Our Fathers, he thought. "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now, and at the hour of our death. Amen." Then he added, "Blessed Virgin, pray for the death of this fish, wonderful though he is." With his prayers said, and feeling much better, he suffered exactly as much, and perhaps a little more. He leaned against the wood of the bow, and began mechanically to work the fingers of his left hand. The sun was hot now, although the breeze was rising gently. "I had better rebait that little line out over the stern," he said. "If the fish decides to stay another night, I will need to eat again, and the water is low in the bottle. I don't think I can get anything but a dolphin here. But if I eat him fresh enough, he won't be bad. I wish a flying fish would come on board tonight, but I have no light to attract them. A flying fish is excellent to eat raw, and I would not have to cut him up. I must save all my strength now. Christ, I did not know he was so big. I'll kill him, though," he said, in all his greatness and his glory. "Although it is unjust," he thought, "but I will show him what a man can do, and what a man endures. I told the boy I was a strange old man," he said. "Now is when I must prove it." The 1,000 times that he had proved it meant nothing. Now he was proving it again. Each time was a new time, and he never thought about the past when he was doing it. I wish he'd sleep, and I could sleep and dream about lions, he thought. Why are the lions the main thing that is left? Don't think, old man, he said to himself. Rest gently now against the wood and think of nothing. He is working. Work as little as you can. It was getting into the afternoon, and the boat still moved slowly and steadily. But there was an added drag now from the easterly breeze, and the old man rowed gently with the small sea, and the hurt of the cord across his back came to him easily and smoothly. Once in the afternoon, the line started to rise again, but the fish only continued to swim at a slightly higher level. The sun was on the old man's left arm and shoulder and on his back, so he knew the fish had turned east of north. Now that he had seen him once, he would picture the fish swimming in the water with his purple pectoral fins set wide as wings, and the great erect tail slicing through the dark. I wonder how much he sees at that depth, the old man thought. His eye is huge, and a horse with much less eye can see in the dark. Once I could see quite well in the dark. Not in the absolute dark, but almost as a cat sees. The sun and his steady movement of his fingers had uncramped his left hand now completely, and he began to shift more of the strain to it, and he shrugged the muscles of his back to shift the hurt of the cord a little. If you're not tired, fish, he said aloud, you must be very strange. He felt very tired now, and he knew the night would come soon, and he tried to think of other things. He thought of the big leagues. To him they were the Gran Ligas, and he knew that the Yankees of New York were playing the Tigres of Detroit. This is the second day now that I do not know the result of the Juegos, he thought, but I must have confidence, and I must be worthy of the great DiMaggio, who does all things perfectly even with the pain of the bone spur in his heel. What is a bone spur? He asked himself. Una espuela de hueso. We do not have them. Can it be as painful as the spur of a fighting cock in one's heel? I do not think I could endure that, or the loss of the eye, and of both eyes, and continue to fight as the fighting cocks do. Man is not much beside the great birds and beasts. Still, I would rather be the beast down there in the darkness of the sea. Unless the sharks come, he said aloud. If the sharks come, God pity him, and me. Do you believe the great DiMaggio would stay with a fish as long as I will stay with this one? He thought. I am sure he would, and more, since he is young and strong. Also, his father was a fisherman. But would the bone spur hurt him too much? I do not know, he said aloud. I have never had a bone spur. As the sun set, he remembered, to give himself more confidence, the time in the tavern at Casablanca when he had played the hand game with the great Negro from Cienfuegos, who was the strongest man on the docks. They had gone one day and one night with their elbows on a chalk line on the table and forearms straight up and their hands gripped tight. Each one was trying to force the other's hand down onto the table. There was much betting, and people went in and out of the room under the kerosene lights, and he had looked at the arm and the hand of the Negro and at the Negro's face. They had changed the referees every 4 hours, and after the first 8, so that the referees could sleep. Blood came out from under the fingernails of both his and the Negro's hands, and they looked each other in the eye and at their hands and forearms, and the betters went in and out of the room, and sat on high chairs against the wall and watched. The walls were painted bright blue, and were of wood, and the lamps threw their shadows against them. The Negro's shadow was huge, and it moved on the wall as the breeze moved the lamps. The odds would change back and forth all night, and they fed the Negro rum and lighted cigarettes for him. Then the Negro, after the rum, would try for a tremendous effort, and once he had the old man, who was not an old man then, but was Santiago el Campeón, nearly 3 inches off balance. But the old man had raised his hand up to dead even again. He was sure then that he had the Negro, who was a fine man and a great athlete, beaten. And at daylight, when the betters were asking that it be called a draw, and the referee was shaking his head, he had unleashed his effort and forced the hand of the Negro down and down until it rested on the wood. The match had started on a Sunday morning and ended on a Monday morning. Many of the betters had asked for a draw because they had to go to work on the docks, loading sacks of sugar, or at the Havana Coal Company. Otherwise, everyone would have wanted it to go to a finish. But he had finished it anyway, and before anyone had to go to work. For a long time after that, everyone had called him the champion, and there had been a return match in the spring. But not much money was bet, and he had won it quite easily, since he had broken the confidence of the Negro from Cienfuegos in the first match. After that he had a few matches, and then no more. He decided that he would beat anyone if he wanted to badly enough, and he decided that it was bad for his right hand for fishing. He had tried a few practice matches with his left hand, But his left hand had always been a traitor, and would not do what he called on it to do, and he did not trust it. The sun will bake it out well now, he thought. It should not cramp on me again, unless it gets too cold in the night. I wonder what this night will bring. An aeroplane passed overhead on its course to Miami, and he watched its shadow scaring up the schools of flying fish. With so much flying fish, there should be a dolphin, he said, and leaned back on the line to see if it was possible to gain any on the fish. But he could not, and it stayed at the hardness and water-drop shivering that preceded breaking. The boat moved ahead slowly, and he watched the aeroplane until he could no longer see it. It must have been very strange in an aeroplane, he thought. I wonder what the sea looks like from that height. They should be able to see the fish well if they do not fly too high. I would like to fly very slowly at 200 fathoms high and see the fish from above. In the turtle boats I was in the crossed trees of the masthead, and even at that height I saw much. The dolphin looked greener from there, and you could see their stripes and their purple spots, and you could see all of the school as they swim. Why is it that all the fast-moving fish of the dark current have purple backs, and usually purple stripes or spots? The dolphin looks green, of course, because he is really golden, but when he comes to feed, truly hungry, purple stripes show on his sides as on a marlin. Can it be anger, or the greater speed he makes that brings them out? Just before it was dark, as they passed a great island of sargasso weed that heaved and swung in the light sea, as though the ocean were making love with something under a yellow blanket, his small line was taken by a dolphin. He saw it first when it jumped in the air, true gold, in the last of the sun, and bending and flapping wildly in the air. It jumped again and again in the acrobatics of its sphere, and he worked his way back to the stern, and crouching and holding the big line with his right hand and arm, he pulled the dolphin in with his left hand, stepping on the gained line each time with his bare left foot. When the fish was at the stern, plunging and cutting from side to side in desperation, the old man leaned over the stern and lifted the burnished gold fish with his purple spots over the stern. Its jaws were working convulsively in quick bites against the hook, and it pounded the bottom of the skiff with its long flat body, its tail, and its head, until he clubbed it across the shining golden head until it shivered and was still. The old man unhooked the fish, rebaited the line with another sardine, and tossed it over. Then he worked his way slowly back to the bow. He washed his left hand and wiped it on his trousers. Then he shifted the heavy line from his right hand to his left, and washed his right hand in the sea while he watched the sun go into the ocean and the slant of the big cord. He hasn't changed at all, he said, watching the movement of the water against his hand, and noted that it was perceptibly slower. I'll lash 2 oars together across the stern, and that will slow him in the night, he said. He's good for the night, and so am I. I would be better to gut the dolphin a little later to save the blood in the meat, he thought. I can do that a little later, and lash the oars to make a drag at the same time. I had better keep the fish quiet now, and not disturb him too much at sunset. The setting of the sun is a difficult time for all fish. He let his hand dry in the air, and then grasped the line with it, and eased himself as much as he could, and allowed himself to be pulled forward against the wood so that the boat took the strain as much or more than he did. I'm learning how to do it, he thought. This is part of it anyway. Then, too, remember he hasn't eaten since he took the bait, and is huge and needs much food. I have eaten the whole bonito. Tomorrow I will eat the dolphin. He called it a dorado. Perhaps I should eat some of it when I clean it. It will be harder to eat than the bonito, but then nothing is easy. How do you feel, fish? He asked aloud. I feel good, and my left hand is better, and I have food for a night and a day. Pull the boat, fish. He did not truly feel good, because the pain from the cord across his back had almost passed pain and gone into a dullness that he mistrusted. But I have had worse things than that, he thought. My hand is only cut a little, and the cramp is gone from the other. My legs are all right. Also, now I have gained on him in the question of sustenance. It was dark now, as it becomes dark quickly after the sun sets in September. He lay against the worn wood of the bow and rested all that he could. The first stars were out. He did not know the name of Regal, but he saw it, and knew they would all be out, and he would have all his distant friends. The fish is my friend too, he said aloud. I have never seen him or heard of such a fish, but I must kill him. I am glad we do not have to try to kill the stars. Imagine if each day a man must try and kill the moon, he thought. The moon runs away. But imagine if a man must each day try to have to kill the sun. We were born lucky, he thought. Then he was sorry for the great fish that had nothing to eat, and his determination to kill him never relaxed in his sorrow for him. How many people will he feed, he thought. But are they worthy to eat him? No, of course not. There is no one worthy of eating him, from the manner of his behaviour and his great dignity. I do not understand these things, he thought, but it is good that we do not have to try and kill the sun or the moon or the stars. It is enough to live on the sea and kill our true brothers. Now, he thought, I must think about the drag. It has its perils and its merits. I may lose so much line that I will lose him, but if he makes his effort and the drag made by the oars is in place, then the boat loses all her lightness. Her lightness prolongs both our suffering, but it is my safety, since he has great speed that he has never yet employed. No matter what passes, I must gut the dolphin so he does not spoil, and eat some of him to be strong. Now I will rest an hour more, and feel that he is solid and steady, before I move back to the stern to do the work and make the decision. In the meantime, I can see how he acts and if he shows any changes. The oars are a good trick, but it has reached the time to play for safety. He has much fish still, and I know that the hook was in the corner of his mouth, and he has kept his mouth tight shut. The punishment of the hook is nothing. The punishment of hunger, and that he is against something that he does not comprehend, is everything. Rest now, old man, and let him work until your next duty comes. He rested for what he believed to be 2 hours. The moon did not rise now until late, and he had no way of judging the time. Nor was he really resting except comparatively. He was still bearing the pull of the fish across his shoulders, but he placed his left hand on the gunwale of the bow, and confided more and more of the resistance to the fish to the skiff itself. How simple it would be if I could make the line fast, he thought. But with one small lurch he could break it. I must cushion the pull of the line with my body at all times, and be ready to give line with both hands. But you have not slept yet, old man, he said aloud. It is half a day and a night now, and another day, and you have not slept. You must devise a way so that you sleep a little if he is quiet and steady. If you do not sleep, you might become unclear in the head. I'm clear enough in the head, he thought. Too clear. I am as clear as the stars that are my brothers. Still, I must sleep. They sleep, and the moon and the sun sleep, and even the ocean sleeps sometimes on certain days when there is no current and a flat calm. But remember to sleep, he thought. Make yourself do it, and devise some simple and sure way about the lines. Now go back and prepare the dolphin. It is too dangerous to rig the oars as a drag if you must sleep. I could go without sleeping, he told himself, but it would be too dangerous. He started to work his way back to the stern, on his hands and knees, being careful not to jerk against the fish. He may be half asleep himself, he thought, but I do not want him to rest. He must pull until he dies. Back in the stern, he turned so that his left hand held the strain of the line across his shoulders, and drew his knife from its sheath with his right hand. The stars were bright now, and he saw the dolphin clearly, and he pushed the blade of the knife into its head and drew him out from under the stern. He put one of his feet on the fish and slit him quickly from the vent up to the tip of his lower jaw. Then he pulled his knife down and gutted him with his right hand, scooping him clean and pulling the gills clear. He felt the maw heavy and slippery in his hands, and he slit it open. There were 2 flying fish inside. They were fresh and hard, and he laid them side by side, and dropped the guts and gills over the stern. They sank, leaving a trail of phosphorescence in the water. The dolphin was cold and a leprous grey-white now in the starlight, and the old man skinned one side of him while he held his right foot on the fish's head. Then he turned him over and skinned the other side and cut each side off from the head down to the tail. He slid the carcass overboard and looked to see if there was any swirl in the water, but there was only the light of its slow descent. He turned then and placed the 2 flying fish inside the 2 fillets of fish, and putting his knife back into its sheath, he worked his way slowly back to the bow. His back was bent with the weight of the line across it, and he carried the fish in his right hand. Back in the bow, he laid the 2 fish fillets out on the wood with the flying fish beside them. After that, he settled the line across his shoulders in a new place, and held it again with his left hand resting on the gunwale. Then he leaned over the side and washed the flying fish in the water, noting the speed of the water against his hand. His hand was phosphorescent from skinning the fish, and he watched the flow of the water against it. The flow was less strong, and as he rubbed the side of his hand against the planking of the skiff, particles of phosphorescence floated off and drifted slowly astern. "He is tiring, or he is resting," the old man said. "Now let me get through the eating of this dolphin, and get some rest and a little sleep." Under the stars, and with the night colder all the time, he ate half of the dolphin fillets, and one of the flying fish, gutted, with its head cut off. "What an excellent fish dolphin is to eat cooked," he said, "and what a miserable fish raw. I will never go in a boat again without salt or limes. If I had brains, I would have splashed water on the bow all day, and drying, it would have made salt, he thought. But then I did not hook the dolphin until almost sunset. Still, it was a lack of preparation, but I have chewed it all well, and I am not nauseated. The sky was clouding over to the east, and one after another the stars he knew were gone. It looked now as though he were moving into a great canyon of clouds, and the wind had dropped. There will be bad weather in 3 or 4 days, he said, but not tonight, and not tomorrow. Rig now to get some sleep, old man, while the fish is calm and steady. He held the line tight in his right hand, and then pushed his thigh against his right hand, as he leaned all his weight against the wood of the bow. Then he passed the line a little lower over his shoulders, and braced his left hand on it. My right hand can hold it as long as it is braced, he thought. If it relaxes in sleep, my left hand will wake me as the line goes out. It is hard on the right hand, but he is used to punishment. Even if I sleep 20 minutes or half an hour, it is good. He lay forward, cramping himself against the line with all of his body, putting all his weight onto his right hand, and he was asleep.